to one and all. I, Purva Ganguly, on behalf of HSNC Boards, Kishan Chand Chalaram Law College, welcome you all on the fourth day of Alumni Webinar Series 2. I would like to request our principal, Dr. Kavita Lalchandani Madam, to address the participants.
Thank you, Purva. Advocate Malcolm, speaker for today's session and proud alumnus of our KC Law College. Our Vice Principal, who is the convener of this webinar series, Dr. Bindu Warrier, Dr. Kiran Sharma, my other colleague faculties, non-teaching staff, advocates, students from KC Law College and from other law colleges, and also faculties from other colleges. A very good morning to all of you. Friends, today we have another speaker, Advocate Malcolm, who is going to discuss with us about another topic. As you all know that we have started our alumni webinar series from this Monday, and today is the fourth day of this series. And for this week, alumni webinar series, for a week we have arranged where all the alumni of our KC Law College every day coming and having a discussion with all the participants on various aspects related to law. So friends, I extend a very warm welcome to each one of you for our fourth day of alumni webinar series. And I am thankful to all of you for being with us. And I'm also thankful to Advocate Malcolm, who is with us today in this morning, who accepted this invitation and who is of course a part of this KC Law College and very senior person. So I'm really thankful to you for being with us in this morning and sharing your vast knowledge with the students of not only KC Law College, but other colleges also as well. Thank you.
Thank you, madam. Participants are requested to mute themselves and turn off their video during the session. They can raise their question relating to today's topic on the chat box only. Those who are having problem with the chat box can individually ask the speaker their questions, their queries at the end of the session. At the end of the session, feedback form will be shared and it is mandatory to fill the feedback form. Participants are also requested to write their full name while they are joining for the webinar, while logging in. Thank you. It gives me immense pleasure and pride to introduce our today's speaker, Advocate Bapu Malcolm. Advocate Bapu Malcolm is a practicing advocate at Bombay High Court and also an empaneled arbitrator. Advocate Malcolm completed his BA Honours from Pune, Shivaji University in Economics, Politics and also in English Special. Advocate Malcolm has done his diploma in advertising, public relations and his LLB from KC Law College. Advocate Malcolm is a gold medalist in journalism. Advocate Malcolm has an experience of 40 years in the engineering field. He is also having a successful career in litigation as well as he is tutoring in law in different law colleges. Advocate Malcolm has been invited as a resource person in different seminars and conferences. Apart from his interest in law field, he has a keen interest in sports also. Advocate Malcolm has conceptualized and helped to organize Asia's longest international cycle race, as well as he is the founder of the Indian Professional Cyclist Association. We are honored by your presence, and I would like to request him to share his views on today's topic, art of drafting and cross-examination. Over to you, Mr. Malcolm.
Thank you, Professor Ganguly. I wish I could listen to what you said every morning. It will make my day. I don't think anybody has praised me as much as you have ever in my life. Anyway, what is that? Since we have the topic of drafting and cross-examination, I thought that speaking on just one subject would be quite boring, and we have two subjects in fact on the same day. And then I realized that there is not much of a difference between the two. In drafting,
Sound,
it's on a
sound is coming. Yeah, yeah.
Anything wrong with my end?
Yeah. Now, no. Now it is okay, sir.
Okay.
Some sound was
You want-
coming. Now it is okay.
to
Yes.
restart?
Please continue. Yeah. Please continue, sir.
Okay. As I said, there seem to be a correlation between the two, drafting and cross-examination. In drafting, it's almost like a monologue, and when you draft, you naturally want the other side to respond, and you want them to respond in the way you want them to. In a way, you want them to answer questions which will be beneficial to you. In cross-examination, it's almost the same. I remember one of the greatest crime law advocates. I do not believe in the word criminal advocates or criminal lawyers, because then the word criminal becomes an adjective. And I presume that all lawyers are honest and not criminals. So I will not use the word criminal lawyer, and I don't think anybody else should either. So crime law lawyer, one Mr. Tulpule, very helpfully passed away almost 3 years ago now. In cross-examination, he used to tell me, he says, Bapu, never ask a question to which the reply would not be beneficial to you. And always ask the question so that you get the answer that you want. In drafting, I think it should be the same thing. Anyway, I've got some good news for you. There was some sort of a competition on LinkedIn where plain language was to be used. And they must have got entries from all over. And the first prize went to a picture, and the second prize came to me. So I think I'm now eminently qualified to talk on simple language, which is something I've always liked. Why simple language? Let's go back about 35 years, 36 years. One day I received a notice from the court. I had never received a notice from the court before. One day I received a notice. The trustees of my building wanted to evict me. Now, mind you, eviction from a place where I was born. So I read it and I could not make head nor tail of it. Extremely difficult to understand. Even though it was in English, it was extremely difficult to understand. And I showed it to my lawyer, who was just appointed. I didn't know him before that. And he said that this is the language that lawyers use. And we naturally had to respond to the plaint. So I asked him, I said, Mr. Doria, would you mind if I responded to this in the language which I like? And very surprisingly, he said, of course, go ahead. And from that day onwards, each and every document of mine has been totally shorn of legalese, totally shorn of unnecessary adjectives and adverbs. No repetition. If I do find a repetition, I avoid it. And if it is necessary, I would say this is being repeated. I would make a point to mention it, that this is being repeated as it was repeated in paragraph number so and so above. And the reason for the repetition, because the same point might have meaning in two different places. When I started drafting that, I didn't even know the word written statement at that time, and I always call it a response. It turned out to be a rather short one. And Mr. Doria, of course, pushed it through. Maybe a couple of letters were exchanged in between. The case lasted for 22 years. That written statement of mine was the only one. And we won hands down. So I realized that simple, plain English wins the day. Even today, we get all sorts of documents which are so convoluted that it is difficult to understand. Before, by the way, my wife and I passed out from KC College in 2006. So we don't have that much. I mean, I might be 79, but we don't have that much of experience in litigation or in law itself, except for the fact that I've been drafting for a long time, drafting for many, many years. So if you will understand this, that simple language carries the day. And today, I would like to emphasize on the benefits of simple language. One of our colleagues, I was handling their matters. Maybe they didn't have the time to go to all the courts. I was rather new to the profession. One of our colleagues one day sent me, I don't know whether it was a plaint or a written, I really don't know, sent me a bunch of papers, maybe 150, 200 papers. I read it once, I read it twice. For the life of me, I could not understand. Of course, she was not available. And in those days, mobile phones were also not that common. She was not available. And I did not know whether we were for the plaintiffs or whether we were for the defendants. I just kept it aside. Fortunately, she did not call me back. But this is the way that material is drafted. Maybe she got a plaint from somebody and sent it over to me, I don't know. So what I feel is, to begin your drafting, the first page, please write it as you would see the first page of a novel. Of course, you have the name of the court at the top, the type of suit that it is. There's no need for the addresses. You can have the name of the plaintiffs and the defendants, whichever, you might be for either of the two. Write your name and say Mr. or Miss or Mrs. So-and-so is for the plaintiff above. And your address, your telephone number, your email address. Just have one more page on your document. It's immaterial whether it's a plaint or it's a written statement or it's some response in between, you're answering a notice, whatever it is. But please have that page. And if I don't know how many of you look at American law reports. I do very regularly. In fact, every Saturday I get a bunch of law reports. You will notice it's so beautifully drafted. Each and every page is so beautifully drafted. The indexes are superb. And you know exactly what you are doing. That, unfortunately, we lack to a very great extent. Coming to the next, this is not really an introduction. It's the first page. It's like a novel. And I sincerely believe that each and every document that you prepare, as I said, I'll use the word document, whether it is a plaint, whether it's a written statement, whether it's a response, whether you're sending a notice. Each and every document should be a story. You are, in effect, writing a story. Today, if I rambled off something and showed you something on the screen, I've taken it off that PowerPoint, something I've copied and put it on the screen. You could very well go to that page in a book and not want to listen to me. Why should you spend your time listening to me? You could be having a nice breakfast or cup of coffee and read it afterwards. But the idea is that if you make it into a story, something really interesting, in that case, finally who reads what you write? Forget the opposition. Forget your opposition's clients. You're not bothered with them. Really not bothered with them. The only person that you are bothered with is the judge. And the judge doesn't know the story. So you have to weave your story and make the judge interested enough first to read it, to understand it, take an interest in it, and finally give a decision in your favor. This brings us to another point. How big? I try to, this is what I do. I mean, I'm not asking everybody else to do it. I'm sure there are a lot of lawyers out there who are listening to me who like to write briefs of 50 pages, 100 pages, 150 pages. I like to keep my stuff within 10 pages. If I cannot tell my story within 10 pages, I am not a good storyteller. Judges don't have the time to go through your encyclopedic material. I have known counsel rush into courts and somebody handing them a voluminous brief at the door, rushing in and reading no more than the prayers. Because if they don't have the time, do you think that the judge or his associates have the time to read all this? So try to keep it as short and sweet as possible. It's what is called the KISS rule, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. This was, if people are reading me on LinkedIn, they might have noticed it. This was taught to me by an 80-year-old self-taught engineer who got me into machining processes. And anytime we would discuss anything, he would give me, he says, Bapu, KISS. Keep it simple, stupid. Don't complicate matters. Do not complicate where you can make it easy. If you want to complicate, that means that you are not sure of yourself. If you want to complicate, you can confuse, you can concoct, you can create, you can do all sorts of things, but it is not going to carry the day for you. So the next thing that you do is keep it short and sweet. I like 10 pages. I try to keep it within 10 pages. Now, how do you break up your material? I'll go back to another anecdote. My sister in Australia had sent me a power of attorney. She had given the power to me. It was on 2 sides of an A4 paper, closely typed, single space, one line almost touching the other, almost 2 pages full, and without a single full stop. It was just one sentence. I believe that solicitors like to do it that way. Just one sentence. I don't know why it's done. No one has ever asked them to do it. No book says that it should be done, but it was just one sentence. And it was extremely difficult not only to read, but even to understand. I used that piece of paper to explain to my students of how not to write. Unfortunately, the paper is 200 kilometers away. We're stuck in a village in Gujarat. Otherwise, I would have shown it to you. Anybody wants, I can do it. Now, that sort of a thing is meaningless. If you really want to read books on that, one of the best persons you could read is Brian Gardner. He writes beautifully. He writes books on how to write, how to prepare your briefs, especially appeals. And wherever you go, you will find the 20-80 rule. 20-80 is a very common thing in a lot of things. But the 20-80 rule, what does it say? Your paragraph, try and keep it within 80 words. If you want to emphasize only one point, I think you should be able to do it in 80 words. Maybe sometimes you would go to 90, sometimes you could finish it off in 50, but try to make it 80. And what about the 20? In those 80 words, are you going to have only one sentence? Are you going to have 2, 3, 4 or more? Keep your sentences to 20 words. I'll tell you why. A person's attention span is limited, especially when they have a lot to read. So, the topic in one paragraph of 80, and you break up the topic into explanations, try and keep it within 20. If you keep it within 20, a person will understand exactly what you want to say. I suggest you try it out. Take some of the old briefs, anybody's briefs, which are voluminous and which ramble on and on and on, and try to break it up. Do that exercise, try to break it up, and then see how much better it reads. And having done that, there's another thing, I like this a little bit. I'll come back to this point of 20. We have been taught that you cannot highlight anything in a brief. No bold fonts, no underlining, no italics. I do it all the time. And no one has ever asked me not to do it. Because if I want to change from one subject to the other, the person who is reading it must be told that I'm taking a second track or a third track. Otherwise, it seems like you are on one point all the time. And concentration is not concentrated. So the idea is, I know I'm ruffling a lot of feathers right now. People must be saying, what does this old man know? What is he talking about? But I'll tell you one thing. All my cases, I have won on my briefs. Open and shut case. The very first time I went to court, I think Professor Bindu will remember. Divya was to take up litigation and I was to do the documentation. A friend of mine came to me and said that somebody had processed the writ on him. He didn't know what to do with it. He came to me and said, unless you take up the defense, I'm going to let it go. He literally threatened me, blackmailed me into it. Anyway, so I had never actually gone and argued in court. I prepared a response to that. I prepared a response in simple, plain language. But I realized that I would be having to face a judge in court, and naturally, first time, everybody's nervous. What I did was, I went and sat in the court of that particular judge, because matters don't come up on the first day, third, fourth day in the High Court. So I went there, and I found that the judge was very fond of using cricketing terms. Somehow or the other. That time there was no T20, it was only ODI. He was very fond of using cricketing terms. I went back home, threw away my brief, and reworked it with cricketing terms. Because I knew that if I put in those cricketing terms, I'm not bothered with the petitioner. Whether he understands me or not is immaterial. If he doesn't understand me, so much the better. Will the judge understand me? So I put in those cricketing terms. In 10 minutes, we had the writ thrown out. My client is nudging me. She's telling me, say something, say something. I didn't say a word. It was my brief that saw me through. That day I realized the importance of a concise, simple brief where you are addressing the judge, nobody else. I am not writing it to please myself. I am not writing it to please 100 people, 1,000 people, or 1,000,000 people. My target is the judge. And if while writing your brief, if you visualize that there's a man sitting up there, black coat, black robe, bands, you're talking with him, maybe even talking to him because he's not responding. That is the way to write a brief. That is the way I have succeeded. I have succeeded in almost every case. If somebody wants, I can show you my briefs because they are really brief. Briefs have to be brief. They cannot be encyclopedias. Now, how do you start your brief? How do you start your response? How do you start your plaint? Within the first 2 or 3 paragraphs, that means about 200 words, you must be able to convey whatever you have to say. What follows is an elaboration. Certain points are taken up. But if you cannot explain what you want to say in the first 2 or 3 paragraphs, forget your brief, throw it away. It's not going to carry the day. No one is interested in knowing what you have written at the end of the page or at the end of your whatever it is, your response. They want to understand what you want in the first 2 or 3 paragraphs. Please have a nice, decent title to whatever you want to say in bold capital letters. No one is going to ask you why you have done it. No one has ever asked me why I have done it. But in those 3 paragraphs, you must be able to tell your story. I think everybody must have gone through essay writing at school, essay writing and comprehension, where things were to be reduced to 1/3 the size, and essay writing of how to do it. If you will remember, there's an introduction, there's a body, and there's an ending. Your brief should be the same way. There should be an introduction, the first 3 paragraphs at the most. Then the body, and at the end, what you really want. If it's a plaint, what your reliefs are, what you want from the court. If it's a defense statement, a written statement, then why the plaint should be thrown out. So if you divide what you have to write in these 3 parts, the introduction, the body, and the ending, it becomes a story, it becomes readable. My wife is sitting right next to me. She always makes fun of me. She says, you don't write briefs, you write detective novels. I consider it as a compliment because you would rather read a detective novel than you would read a brief. Tell me very honestly, how many briefs of maybe 50, 100 pages have people really read? How many people have the time to read them? I'm telling you, counsels, big advocates, they read nothing more than the first couple of pages, first couple of paragraphs and the end, the reliefs that are sought, the prayers, that's all. People really don't have the time. So please keep it concise, keep it simple. And another important thing, how to arrange the paragraphs. Write down whatever you want to. And now it's extremely easy because everybody works on a word processor. Start arranging your paragraphs in a chronological sequence. It's not always easy. I say that it's easy because I've been through journalism and advertising copywriting. So we've been taught what to do. But try to make sure that the last line in your paragraph leads to the next. Make it interesting. The fellow wants to know, maybe even a question at the end of the paragraph. Of course, some judges might ask you why this question. And once I was told in court, I said I would start my arguments with a question. So the judge said, I am not here to answer your questions. I said, no, my lord, my question will answer itself. So the question should answer itself in the next line. Once you have that, the reader feels that he has solved the problem. You are asking a question, he wonders what the answer is. And immediately the next line, he gets the answer. The reader feels happy that yes, I have solved the problem. Okay, you may call it psychological play, I don't know. But at least when we write a brief, minimum 6 times, even up to 10 times, we would revise it. Mainly because it's not very big, only 10 pages. But we keep on revising it. We shift the paragraphs around to make it readable, to make it fluid. Now, if you can do that, and another thing, very, very important thing, which was taught to me many years ago by a very, very old advocate. He had started life in some solicitor's firm as a peon or a draftsman. I don't know, a very small position, but he had become a very big advocate in his time. And he said, Bapu, whenever you draw up a plaint, stop everything. First thing you write is your prayers. People start the plaint and then write the prayers at the very end. He says, no, start with the prayers and build up your plaint on the prayers. So what we do now is, first we find out what exactly we want from the court. As many things, 10, 15, 20 sim material. Keep on typing as many reliefs as you want. And after that, take out what is unnecessary, combine what you think can be combined, and make your prayers maybe 5, 6 or 7 at the most. Don't give 100 prayers. I mean, people give A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and then they run to Z, and then they come to A1, A2, A3. Please, when you do that sort of a thing, we right now, we have a plaint which has gone into that. Obviously, more than 26 prayers. And half of them are repetitions. Half of them are repetitions. In fact, we've written to the court. Now being COVID and we can't go there, we've written to the court that except for this one point which we are agreeing with, all the others are redundant, they are repetitions, and that can be taken up at a later stage. There is no urgency in that. The one urgent point, we are agreeing to it, there's no problem on that. Simple. Now he writes maybe 30, 40 prayers. It's all over in 2 lines. We said that referring to prayer number so-and-so, say M2 or whatever it is, we agree. We have no objection to that. We are not going to alienate the property. Let the property be. We are using it and we guarantee you that we will not alienate it. As far as the other things are concerned, there is no urgency. It can stand. So please make your prayers also concise and meaningful. If you ask for the moon, the judge might wonder what you are up to. Why are you asking for so much when it is not necessary? Of course, clients feel very happy when you give them a brief of 500 pages. Hamara advocate ne itna bada paper banaya. They're very happy. But is it worth it? Is it going to win you your case? I don't think so. I really don't think so. You might charge the client per page. Fair enough. The more pages you put in, especially photocopied pages, you'll get 10 rupees a page. But that is not what you want. You want your client to win. So we come to, again, I'll sort of wind up. First, type out your prayers if you are the plaintiff. Of course, first is make out a nice page, an introductory page, which gives everything that you really want to know. Index, excellent. Just yesterday, I got an award from the CAS, that's the Center for Arbitration in Sports in Lausanne, Switzerland. A beautifully written document, superbly written document. That also has a first page, an introductory page. Who are the advocates? What is the constitution of the arbitration bench? Who is the president? Who are the other two? What are their titles? What is their experience, etc., etc. And a beautifully drawn index giving each page, each point on each page. It's a pleasure to read that. I think we should also start. Our briefs should be made that way. So first page, nice introductory page. Then you start, of course, pro forma and index and all that, those are mandatory. You can't change it. You have to give it as it is. Start your brief with an introductory title. Sometimes the title might go into 2 lines also. Fair enough, let it be. The first 3 paragraphs, you want the judge, and I'm telling you, you want the judge to know I'm not interested in the opposition. I don't care who the opposition is. If my clients come and tell me who is the other side's advocate, I say I don't know and I don't care. I am not interested in them. I am interested only in the judge. I see the judge in front of me. I'm speaking with the judge. So I write it in such a way that you have your introduction in the first 2 or 3. It's as if I'm talking with you. Would you like to listen to me for 10 hours? You'd like to listen to me in a capsule in the first 2 or 3 minutes. I hope I've started that way. So first 3 paragraphs, then the body, and then end it in a nice way, which makes it interesting. Thank the court for whatever it is worth and finish it off. Annexures, attachments, all those sort of things, they can come later on. I'll tell you another anecdote. We had not done our LLB then, so this must have been about 2004 or 2005. A friend of mine, my motorcycle mechanic, his property was going in for redevelopment, and there were some 27, 28 tenants. So somebody drew it up. Party of the first part, party of the second part, party of the 26th part, party of the 27th part. Naturally, our response to that was Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so, etc., etc. My mechanic son didn't like it. He liked that thing of party of the second part, party of the third part. So I told him, I said, Rohit, after some time, will you be able to tell me who is party of the 19th part or who is party of the 12th part? Names. Names. And I'm not joking. It has helped. There was one Mr. Purohit who was in the Charity Commissioner's Court. Unfortunately, lost him to malaria some years back. There were 4 cases before him, 4 or 5 family members fighting with each other. Some were respondents, some were complainants, some were opponents. It was extremely difficult, and all of them were clubbed together. It was extremely difficult. So I said, sir, will you allow me to call each by name? There are 4 or 5 people which you know what he said? Yes, Mr. Malcolm, please go ahead. I'm also getting confused. So why don't you write the names in your brief? Why should you write party of the second part or party of the 20th part or defendant number 4 or 5? Who is going to remember? Unless, of course, you want to confuse people. So if Professor Ganguly is defendant number 3 and Professor Bindu is defendant number 11, I'll say Professor Ganguly and Professor Bindu. Why should I say defendant 3 and defendant 11? No one will remember whom I'm talking about. Otherwise, you got to keep on flipping the pages, who it is. Once or twice in the initial stages, you please write defendant number 3, Professor Ganguly. Defendant number 11, Professor Bindu. Then for initial. After that, you go to names. And don't use abbreviations. We were just talking before the webinar started of using abbreviations. If you want to use abbreviations, and mind you, an abbreviation is not what we use is short forms. They are not abbreviations. Abbreviations, a word which should in itself have a meaning. We have misused the word abbreviation. So the word itself should have a meaning. Like MAD, MAD. You know what it stands for? Mutually Assured Destruction. That is MAD. Anything else is not an abbreviation, it's a short form. But if I were to use MAD, I would say Mutually Assured Destruction into brackets MAD. So that every time I use the word MAD, I know that I'm not cursing somebody, but using the word for Mutually Assured Destruction. Don't use briefs. At once you can use it, but then. So give the names. And I think that should. And another thing, another advantage is you will make your brief not litigation proof, but no further litigation, no further adjournments, no further explanations. You put everything in that you want to and make it simple for the judge to understand because he's the one who's going to pass the order. I think that we've talked enough on drafting. Do you want to ask questions on that before we go to cross-examination? I'm sure somebody
Sir,
must have been making notes.
for drafting, I have one question. What is
Yes.
your take on having a heading or title before a paragraph for matters other than reads and PILs?
See, I was told, not by my professors, huh? I was told that brief should not have subtitles. Then I'm very fond of reading. I've read each and every book on Nani Palkhiwala. And his briefs in the Supreme Court had subtitles. His briefs in the Supreme Court were in italics. I said, if that fellow in the Supreme Court can do it, why can't I do it in a trial court? And nobody has ever asked me not to put it in because there is no law which says you can't. Somewhere, somehow, somebody has said you can't put it in, so it becomes gospel truth. Have you, any of you, ever read anywhere that you can't put in subtitles? You can't put in bold, you can't put. Now, suppose I'm quoting somebody. I would like to put it in italics because I'm quoting. Let it be separate from the rest of the stuff, from the body, if I'm quoting you. Why can't I put it in italics and put it in inverted commas? Because I'm quoting somebody. It's not Bapu Malcolm who's saying something, or not my client who's saying something, but I'm quoting somebody. Now, suppose I quote a very great judge. I mean, I would like to use what he has said in some order or the other, some judgment or the other. So naturally, I would say that Justice so-and-so in such and such a court in England or America, wherever it is, had this to say, colon, inverted commas open, italics, copy it down, close inverted commas, full stop. Now, what's wrong in doing that? If I were to just write it as part of the body, it would get lost. And somebody would think that Bapu Malcolm is a great man saying all these things, when I'm not. I'm quoting somebody. So why can't we do that? Now that I have made some notes, so I thought of that also. Please, for heaven's sake, write nothing but the truth. I know clients will ask you to write all sorts of nonsense, outright lies. Please don't do it because you'll get caught. You'll definitely get caught, and we look for that. We go through the opponent's briefs with a tooth comb, trying to find faults, trying to find mistakes, and trying to find lies. Because once you are able to prove in court that person is lying, 90% of your work is done. The judge will not believe anything that they say. So please stick to the truth. If your client insists that something false should be written, give the brief back and send them home. Please do that. Give the brief back and send them home. Tell them that you are here because your business as a lawyer is to inform the court of the truth. Courts do not exist to give orders or judgments. The basic and first fundamental principle of a judicial court is to find the truth. And as an advocate, it is your duty to tell the court what the truth is. Sometimes it might be inconvenient to you, but it is better to tell the court about it from your mouth than let it come from the opponents. Of course, there are ways of doing it. It all depends on how good your drafting is. But if I say that Professor Bindu was wearing a red blouse, I cannot say that she was wearing a blue blouse. But if I can always say that she was not wearing a blue blouse. Or she was not wearing a black blouse, so obviously she was not in mourning. There was some sort of a change like that. But don't hide the truth because it will come out. It definitely comes out in the court. The other side is equally smart. Don't think that you are the only smart person. So please, always the truth. As I said, make the other side answer. I think now we'll take questions on this before we go to
Sir, as of now, no question. Sir, if you go to the next part of your session,
okay,
then it. Yeah.
We go to cross-examination.
Yeah,
now, what is cross-examination? It's theatre.
Sir, I have a question.
Ah, thank you. You saved my day.
Sir, the question is about strategizing. So, if I'm an advocate for the plaintiff, so I might want to put everything, or should I put all my strategies in the plaintiff itself and give out all the details? Or as a defendant, how do I strategize? Do I put everything in the first application itself, or keep it up, for the later? I show my cards all at once or later? That's the question I have. And if you could answer in terms of plaintiff, how I could strategize and how for the defendant, that would be helpful. Thank you.
What's your name, Miss?
Sakshi Solanki, sir.
Sakshi Solanki. Miss Solanki,
Yes.
I am so happy that you asked this question. Nobody has ever asked me this question. And people have derided me for what I write. I like to put everything in my plaint day one. Why should I hide it? Even though the CPC allows you to hide it, the CPC doesn't say that you can't say it. So why hide it? Come up front with everything that you have got. If after the written statement you put in new points, you might be too late. You might be putting them in, the judge will say, because you were caught on the wrong foot, now you come out with it. They say don't give the documents also, don't put them in with the plaint. I put them in. There's no law which says I can't put them in. Put everything up front and give the judge a chance to decide on the case as if he knows. See, the judge has to have faith in you. If you lie, if there is deceit, no matter how good your case is, the judge will always start to wonder whether you're telling him the truth or not. I have got judgments which 3 and 4 judges had refused to give. I have got judgments only because the judge believed me when I said that I have seen the originals. Asked me a couple of times, sure, have you seen the original? I said, yes, my lady, seen the originals. The photocopy in my hand is from the originals. I have made the photocopy from the originals. The order was passed. So unless the judges have faith in you, trust in you, if you try to pull the wool over their eyes, they know. They'll find out immediately. They might even go ahead and say, yes, yes, sir, I believe you. Yes, Mr. So-and-so, I believe you. But the order finally will be against you. So I believe in putting everything up front. You still have a chance after the written statement to add to an argument, but not to put forward evidence which you are hiding. Why do you want to do it? So, Solanki, have I answered your question?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Now for defense.
Yes.
Now see, suppose the plaintiff has hidden something. This is your chance to put forward everything. And then you'll force the plaintiff to agree with you. How you word it becomes important in your written statement. Now, if your plaintiff had put everything up front, your defense statement would become weak. Because you would have to agree with what they have said. So if the plaintiff is hiding something, obviously you would know the case as well as the plaintiff does. So you would be able to come up with a lot more things than the plaintiffs do, because after all, you are in defense. It's your life and death matter. You are going to come up with information. You're going to come up with evidence. So if the plaint is not complete, something is hidden, you have a beautiful chance. Go ahead, tear the plaint apart and make it sound like the plaintiff is lying, plaintiff is hiding. There are always ways of doing it. If you are good with words, if you are a good wordsmith, you'll be able to do it. Put a doubt in the judge's mind that the plaintiff is not being honest. Why half? 3/4 of your battle is won. Every document is psychological warfare, because courtcraft is warfare. It's theater and warfare. Shall we go to the next point? Ms. Solanki, have I answered you?
Yes, We can go ahead.
So I have.
Again, you have question, Solangi?
I have another question, and this is with regards to the document every information. It's with the.
Voice.
Am I audible?
Can you put it in the chat?
No, your voice is breaking. Please put it in the chat box. By that time, I would request Advocate Malcolm to go to the next topic. So we can read the questions at the end, all the questions together.
Professor Ganguly, I'm an old man. I might forget. Next half an hour.
No. I will read the questions for you. So I will read the questions for you.
If you are so sure, I won't forget. Remind me. Huh?
I will read.
Got it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Definitely. Please go ahead with your conversation.
Now we are talking of the cross-examination. Cross-examination, as I said, is all court craft is theatre. There's a director, there are actors, and there is, of course, the critic who is the judge, who decides whether to give you the Academy Award or not. I'll ask you people to write down the name of a book, Cross-Examination by Francis Wellman. Is that correct then? The name? Francis, I'm very bad with names. Francis Wellman. It's a Bible on cross-examination. There are other books on cross-examination too, but this is a pocket book which you can carry and read over a period of time. It's a beautiful book, and Mr. Tulpule had recommended it to me. He says it was our Bible, read it. It's really a good book on cross-examination. Now, cross-examination is a dialogue. As I said, there is quite a bit of similarity between drafting and cross-examination. Cross-examination is a dialogue. In drafting, you have the time. In cross-examination, you don't. It has to be repartee. It's like a sword fight. You know, the ones with the long sword where you touche, one point, the next point. There is no time to think. So before you go into a cross-examination, please think of all the possible permutations and combinations of what I'll call him the victim, because in cross-examination, the person you're cross-examining has to be your victim. You are there to slaughter him. You are not there to listen to him. You are there to prove him wrong. You are there to prove him a liar. If you can do that, nothing like it. First of all, be prepared for anything. I've seen a lot of advocates who write up big charts of this question to us, that question to us, that question to us. And somewhere along the line, you don't get the question that you thought you would get, and you get something else. The next 100 questions become useless. The next 100 questions become useless. Suppose you're taking a witness and you're supposed to question him on something where he's supposed to be there. You think he's there. Everybody thinks he's there. The IO has said that he was there. And you start questioning him, and suddenly he gives an alibi that he was 500 kilometers away on that day. All the questions that you're prepared, out the window. Now, how do you question him? So please be prepared for a smart, intelligent witness. He might be your victim, but make him your victim. Don't let him get the better of you. So when you go into court to examine, be prepared. They will come across all types of witnesses. Some will be scared, some will be arrogant, some will be downright abusive. Some will try to show how smart they are. You have to understand that victim and then proceed accordingly. I'll give you a nice instance. It was my very first cross-examination. A bad case. 6 months had passed. The other side had got hold of the property. We were too late. When the matter came to me, it was too late. We had missed out on Section 6. We had missed out on Section 145. We missed out on everything. Came to me anyway, we started. We went to the High Court, won in the High Court, won the appeal. In fact, the appeal was withdrawn. Anyway, all this happened. Now, this fellow, very arrogant, He would bring 4 or 5 ruffians to court. Anytime I got up to say something, they would laugh, make a noise, until I asked the judge to take down the names of everybody in court. Also, it was theatre, it was natak. So this is how it started. I'd asked the judge to have a morning session and to sequester the 2 witnesses so that each one would not know what the other was saying. He agreed, but instead of 11 o'clock, he came at 12:30. Came at 12:30, one witness was sent away. I excused myself for a couple of minutes, went out and rang up both the telephone numbers of the 2 witnesses, and both were engaged. Do you know what the witnesses had done? The witness whom I was to cross-examine had kept his cell phone open and the other fellow was listening in on the other side. This is how smart they are. I asked him to take out his cell phone. I said, please switch off your... I said, please switch it off. Your cell phone is on. Then after he switched it off, I asked him, I said, do you have another cell phone too? Because they might have 2. Professor Bindu, in our college, you know, you used to take away the cell phone from students. They used to bring another cell phone out. You people did not know that there were 2. Especially for your 40, you know, those 40 questions. People had another cell phone with them. You would take away one, they'd bring out the other. It happens, they are smarter than we are. They are smarter than we are. Anyway, so this fellow comes along very arrogant. He starts off with in Marathi, Mala Angrezi mait nahi, Mala Hindi mait nahi. The judge was fluent in Marathi, so I said, we will have to translate. He said, agreed. Cross-examination started. I knew where he was. I had his antecedents ready. I asked him, I said, where were you on Wednesday, the 12th of December? I said, you were at the Sessions Court. I said, you were at the Sessions Court. Say that. Yes, you were there. What was the case? I've been let off. I said, where is the order for being let off? Now, this is how you break the fellow down. Where is the order? You say that you were let off. Where is the order? He doesn't have an order. The judge now knows that this fellow is a thug. He's already involved in riots and he's out on bail. See, it's a war, but these are small battles that have to be won. That gone, where is your office, this, that, and the other? I said, no, you've not got this office. You've taken half the office from another political party. Finally, he agreed to that. Started examining in Marathi, my broken Marathi. And naturally, the notes would be made in English. And the judge was making the notes and I corrected the judge that, no, this is what he said. Suddenly, this fellow says, Nai tasa nai. I said, boss, you don't know English, so why are you correcting me? See, this is another pinprick. You have to break it down, break down the witness. Later on, I suddenly asked him a question in Hindi, and as I had expected, he answered me in Hindi. So I said, boy, you told me that you don't even understand Hindi. Why are you answering me in Hindi? I said, Baga, तुम्ही इथे बसलेला ना ते चालू खुर्ची आहेत. एक 10 मिनिटं जास्ती बसणार नाही तर तुम्हाला रशियन, जर्मन, फ्रेंच सगळा माहित पडणार. After that, the fellow was no longer aggressive because he had been broken down 2 or 3 times. It's a rough world in cross-examination. And this was my first one, very first cross-examination. So you have to prepare yourself psychologically, and when you are going, you know who the witness is. Please find out their antecedents too. There are detectives who would do it for you. Of course, we can't afford them. We do it on our own. Find out their antecedents, find out what they are, and break them down within the first couple of minutes. Another thing is, if you are going to lay a trap, please lay it in 5 minutes and spring it in 10. If you cannot get the answer that you want from your witness in 10 minutes, please let them go, because you are only wasting your time, his time, and the court's time. You are not going to get what you want. You have to lay your trap in 5 minutes, spring it in 10, and that should be it. You cannot continuously ask of questions and answers. It just keeps on going on, and everybody gets fed up. And at the end of the day, you got nothing. Sometimes, of course, you might, the one question that you want to ask, I mean, the one answer that you want, you might not get. It had happened once, family matter. I kept on asking the witness this, that, and the other, and I would not get the answer. That made no sense. Finally, I just asked, I said, who told you about this? My auntie. Then I suddenly realized that it was the auntie who had put this person up. It was the auntie, because if this person won, the auntie would benefit. Now, sometimes it happens just that one last question, I was out of frustration, I was about to give up. And I just asked, I said, who told you all this? My auntie. That turned the complexion of the whole case turned. In fact, afterwards, we were able to explain to the witness that you are being made of. So, cross-examination is difficult. Don't prepare yours. See, now suppose I had prepared a list of questions. Do you think I would have been able to get through anywhere with that? It would have been impossible, because there are so many twists and turns, and you have to be on the ball. You got to think on your feet. You've got to be ready with your questions. Another thing that I wanted you to know is that when you destroy credibility of a witness, there is nothing like it. That's the end of it. Once you can prove to the judge that the witness is lying, please let them go. Say that, thank you, I've had enough, let him go. Don't ask any more questions, because he might come back with the truth. Once he's lied, say, thank you very much. Examination over. Now, cross-examination should also lead to your final arguments. So if you know what your final arguments are going to be, make sure you get those answers in your cross-examination, because they will be on record. Notes of evidence will have all that. And Mr. Tulpul always used to tell me, Bapu, never ask a question if you don't want to know the answer. But always ask the question in such a way that you get the answer that you want. He used to go up to a witness and tell them that in the 12th or the 13th question, you will answer me the answer that I want. Of course, whether it was the 15th question or the 12th, but the witness is already counting 10, 11, 12. Oh hell, 12th question is going to ask me something which he wants me to answer. The witness, whether he asks or not, is immaterial, but by that time the witness is half dead. It's a psychological game. It's not easy. Don't read out questions and ask them. It is not going to get you anywhere. I think it's more than an hour. We'll take some questions on cross-examination. Shall we?
Yes.
Tell me.
Cross-examination, there is one question from the drafting part. I have heard written statement, we have to give clause-to-clause reply to the claims of the plaintiff. Then how we can be keep it into brief if the plaint is voluminous?
I'll tell you how. I think I had mentioned it to you. A voluminous brief is a repetitive brief. A voluminous brief is a repetitive brief. In fact, if I wrote about it just 2 or 3 days back, that if it's very big, it's repetitive. They like to repeat things all over and over again as if, that's going to be important. Or maybe, as I said, to please the client. So what you do is go through the brief. While you are, of course, you'll have to read the whole brief. You can't miss out on it. Even if it's 500 pages, you are bound to read it. You owe that to your client. But in the margin, we start making notes in pencil. Repetitive, repetitive, repetitive. And then say that paragraphs 2, 17, 93, 305, 504 are repetitive, already answered. I know it's annoying, but what you have to do is Explain to the judge, please don't read the brief, don't read the plaint. It's a lot of bunk. It's the same thing over and over again. Now, if you can put it into one line, paragraph this is a repetitive, already answered in my written statement, paragraph number 4. What will the judge think? Is he going to go through the plaint again? He knows that it's repetitive. So here is your chance to destroy it. Why worry? In fact, I said that. Find mistakes in the plaint. If you can find mistakes in the plaint, nothing like it. And what could be a greater mistake than saying the same thing over and over again? Does that answer your question, whoever asked?
Yeah.
Okay. So next question.
So
Sir,
many
can you?
questions are there.
Sir, can you focus on effective technique in taking cross-examination in chief?
What is it? Now
Sir,
it is written.
can you-
Written. Cross-examination. There is no cross-examination in chief. It's examination in chief. It is a written statement which you just hand over to the court.
Okay.
In fact, in a way, it is good because maybe it's not so good because it's prepared with your client and you put down in your examination in chief exactly what you want the court to hear. I don't like it. I don't like it. The impact is lost. When your client is sitting there and you ask the questions and your client answers and answers honestly, it has a big difference. It makes a very big impression on the judge rather than he just, I don't know whether they read it or not, but or to have your own client sitting there, examination in chief and answering your questions. What would you start with? What is your name? So you will say Professor Ganguly. What is your full name? So you'll say Professor whatever, P. Ganguly or whatever it is. What do you do? I'm a professor. Oh, really? Where do you teach? The Casey College. Ah, Casey College. I was there. Yes, Casey College. Who's the principal there? You are putting the person at ease. You are putting your witness at ease. Never put the other person at ease, not in cross-examination. Don't put that fellow at ease unless you want to lead him thinking that you are a nice guy and that he can pull one over you. That's another tactic that you use in cross-examination. Be very nice to the fellow. If he's very aggressive, you know he's going to be aggressive, that he's a thug or a gunda. Be very nice to him. He'll think that, you know, I can steamroll over this advocate. Put him at ease. But I still feel that examination in chief has a charm of its own. I'm upset that they don't have it. That's the way it is.
Many participants are asking to repeat the name of the author for the cross-examination.
Yes, that's what I said. Please keep your pencils and paper ready at all times when you're attending a webinar. Nobody is interested in webinar. They just sit there and want to listen. No.
And faculty
See how many people didn't have a pencil and a paper? I would have started with that please keep a pencil and a paper ready. Nobody's interested. I'm telling you. Now, okay, I'll repeat it. Cross-examination by Francis Wellman.
Just type it. Faculty Sarita, please type.
Wellman. Unfortunately, if we were at home, we could have shown the book to you, but bad luck. But it's a very well-known book. It must be, I think, about 400 or 500 pages. I don't think it's published in India. It's a foreign publication. It's expensive, but it is good.
Okay.
So there are so many other books on cross-examination too, by Indian authors also.
Yeah, it is typed by Professor Sarita Samel also. You can just look, participants. It is written on the chat box.
Write the title of the book also, so that they,
Yeah.
Done.
Next question for you, sir.
That means I'll have to buy one. I'll have to buy one more book. Professor Ganguly, don't make expenses again and again.
One more question for you. What is the exact purpose of re-examination? Sometimes it is used to improve the mistakes in cross-examination and improving the case. Is this practice correct?
Shall we go back to the briefs that we were talking of, the drafting? What had I said? The court is there to find the truth. The court is not there to give orders, and they are there to give orders and judgments. But the first thing that they have to do is find the truth. Now, if I may digress again to that, my auntie told me so. I was brought in late, maybe 3 or 4 years down the line. The case was not going anywhere. I was brought in late. Cross-examination over, I filed the purses. Because the client had come to me with 2 or 3 box files. So I filed the purses. The other side advocate, nice guy, he told me, he said, Bapu, aren't you going to file your evidence? So I said, that's already been done by the previous advocate. Somehow I felt that I should go back to the court. That afternoon I went back to the court and asked for the papers. You won't believe it, there were hardly 50 or 60 papers. The previous advocate had not filed anything. Now what happens? Fortunately, at the last moment in my purses, I wrote that if new evidence comes in, I should be allowed to introduce it. It just happened, it was luck. When I went back to the court in the afternoon, I find about 50, 60 pages, nothing else. I ring up my client. My client says, no, we have given all those papers. We have given them to you also. Very aggressively. I said, look, your papers are, no, they are there. Fortunately, another piece of luck. Because they were staying under the same roof, there was a bit of a fight. And my opponent on the phone says to the opponent's advocate, we are going to win this case. Nothing of theirs is on record. Again, I get a phone from the client. This is what I heard. I said, I've been telling you this for the last 15 days. Next day, we rush to court. It's difficult to get the papers out when they're being put in the cupboard. We get it out. We find that everything is missing. We make an application to the court that this is it. Okay, we filed the purses, but this is it. New evidence coming in. Everybody said it's not possible. Just not possible. Biggest of counsel, biggest I said, sorry, you lost the case. We told the court only one thing. You are sitting here to find the truth, and you cannot find the truth unless these papers are on record. They allowed our motion. And everything now is put on record. So re-examination, if it's necessary, you have to explain to the court, and no court will refuse you because it is their duty to find the truth. So re-examination sometimes becomes necessary, sometimes it helps you, sometimes it might help the other side. But if you make a proper application, if you can convince the court that it is necessary, they will allow it. Why not?
Okay. So can I go to next question, sir?
Please do.
Yeah. For draft preparation, you have given us some order. First introduction, then index, then brief, etc. What is the points in introduction actually one should show, sir? Otherwise, it appears there is a repetition in introduction and brief.
Okay. Let us suppose that we are writing a story about today's webinar. How would you write it? In 2 or 3 paragraphs. There was a brief introduction by the staff of the KC College. I'm not going to write your names or anything. It's meaningless. Brief introduction. The speaker was introduced briefly. Next point I go to is the speaker had 2 topics to discuss. One was drafting and the other was cross-examination. After the draft, in the drafting he said this. In the cross-examination he said this. Second paragraph, third paragraph, certain students asked certain questions which were answered, and in short what the questions were done. The whole story is over in 3 paragraphs. I have told you everything in 1 minute. We've been talking for 1 hour. I have told it to you in 1 minute. And of course, They asked the name of the book because nobody had a paper and a pencil in hand. So it's extremely easy. It takes time. I'm not saying that the first day you'll start to write a brief, you're going to get it done. But that's what I said. 6 times, 8 times, 10 times you have to revise it. And we have a program. My colleague and I, we have a program. Anybody new, freshers, if they get a case, we have told them that if you don't get internship, let it be, don't worry. Take on a case, any case that comes to you, make your points, send it to us. We'll help you with the briefs, whether it is defense statement, whether it is a plaint, whatever it is, send it to us, email it to us, and we will help you draft it.
Okay. Next question. Should one avoid the usage of legal maxims while drafting written statements?
Oh my God. Oh my God. Oh my God. Somebody has been reading me on LinkedIn. Right? Who is the person?
It is Natasha, our own student, Natasha Dasani.
Natasha, have you been reading me on LinkedIn? Just 3 or 4 days back, I wrote on maxims and what did I write? On maxims and minuses.
Natasha.
Okay, Natasha, look me up on LinkedIn. You will find that on maxims and minuses. Just a few days back. In fact, it's got quite a number of hits. Yes, I love maxims. In fact, on LinkedIn, I've written, this is how I started that I love maxims. A lot of people don't, but I love them. Yeah, of course, in that particular post, I have written of how one woman started telling me that I was trying to show off my knowledge of language. I said, I don't know Latin. I'm admitting that I don't know Latin, but it doesn't mean that I don't want to understand it. There's a very beautiful book on maxims. I forget that what's the name? Latin for lawyers. More than 1,000 maxims. And almost every 2 or 3 maxims, we made marginal notes, including the cases where the maxims would be relevant. Of course, you don't use maxims just because you want to use maxims. The maxim must be relevant to your case. So maxims are the condensed wisdom of the ages, 3,000 years worth. And in a small sentence, you can explain your case. Now, if you're worried about Latin or you're scared of Latin, I'm sorry, we can't help you. But what we do is we take the Latin maxim. I think Professor Bindu might remember, we used to write for each word, there would be an English translation. Each word, there would be an English translation. So that when we read the Latin maxim, the book gets destroyed completely with all the notations. But with each word, you would know what it means. So I think Latin maxims are beautiful. As I've written, one of my favorite judges, Benjamin Cardozo, said, I hate Latin maxims. Fair enough, but I love them. If you can get the right Latin maxim, there are thousands of them. In fact, Divya and I on our first wedding anniversary, we had exchanged maxims. Broom's maxims. I had given her Broom's maxims, and what had you given me? Water. She said lots of love. Wharton. She gave me Wharton and I gave her Broom. Not a broom, it's a book. The author's name is the Broom. Huh? So we have very few maxims in first year, just I think 15, 20, 30, and the same things are asked over and over again in the examinations. You can study them by heart, but the more beautiful maxims are not taught at college.
Okay.
And mind you, there are so many maxims that repeat, different words for the same idea. Please do use maxims, but immediately after the maxim, please give the explanation immediately. Otherwise, it will sound like you're trying to pull one over the judge. So you can always say that this, and means this. Explain it immediately, or just put it into brackets, put it into italics, whatever it is. But I use them whenever it is necessary, not all the time, but whenever it is necessary. And I love them.
Okay. So next question for you, sir. According to you, What is the appropriate length in number of days for cross-examination?
10 minutes. I said that if you can't set your trap in 5 minutes and spring it in 10, let the witness go, because you are not going to get anything done, unnecessary waste of time. By harassing a witness for 10 and 15 hours, it's incorrect. What do you want to know? Life history of a 60-year-old? You can keep on asking questions all the time, but is it leading you anywhere? Are you getting the answers that you want? Is it going to help your case? Just asking questions because you are allowed to ask questions and the judge doesn't stop you doesn't mean you keep on at it. If you cannot spring your trap in 10 minutes, I think you should let the witness go. Of course, if you spring your trap in less than 10 minutes, then you set up another one. Another 10 minutes, another 10 minutes. Then you can go on. Trap the witness as much as possible. Destroy the witness's credibility in cross-examination. That is what you are there for.
Okay. So one participant
I know it sounds very brutal, but it is brutal. It's warfare. It's warfare by other means. It is brutal, and cross-examination has to be brutal. Read Perry Mason. We've got about 20-25 books. Fortunately, they are here in the village. Read Perry Mason. Towards the end, you'll find cross-examination. Every book has a cross-examination. You'll learn how the trap is set. What are the questions that are asked? Yes, tell me. I'm sorry I disturbed you.
Yeah, no. Some participants are asking for your contact details if anybody wants to contact you.
At the rate of 10,000 rupees a minute, I will give my contact details. We shall send them over to the college. You can get them from the college. But please remember that we are in a village. Connectivity is very bad. We don't know when we'll be going back to Bombay. Connectivity is extremely bad over here. Once in a while, you'll be able to get us. In fact, we are very lucky that the power has held for 1.5 hours. Normally, it vanishes for a few hours. So today, I think because Professor Ganguly and Professor Bichu have done their puja very well in the morning, the power has held. So we will be sending my email address and telephone number, and anytime you can get in touch with us, especially as I said, freshers, please go to LinkedIn, look up my profile, because on my profile, we've kept that. Anybody can go there and look at it. We've got a program where we'd like to help freshers with their cases. As I said, take up a case, anything, small municipal cases, somebody's broken a traffic light or something like that. Take up the case, make your notes, of course, properly. Yeah? We're not going to do everything for you. And then we could work together and get you going.
Okay. Bindu ma'am, can we go ahead with the
vote? Excuse me, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah,
ma'am, I have one question.
Yeah, please.
Your name, please. Yeah.
My name is Sakshi Solanki. So the question was...
She's asking a lot of questions. Charge her properly.
Yeah.
I'm not even a student from KC College. So, yeah, anyway, the question, sir, I wanted to ask is about this document called Dates and Events. I think it's one of the most important documents, at least law firms put a lot of pressure on interns as well to make this quite right. So, sir, I just wanted to know your opinion on how you can make this Dates and Events, paper document more perfect, like, so that, you can have all the details, and how would you strategize your dates and events, especially?
Miss Solanki, I am an old man. If you ask one question after the other, I tend to forget. So let us go one by one. You said that there is a document called Dates and Events. Are you speaking of the synopsis?
Hello.
That's a chronology. A synopsis is a chronology. And in fact, the first thing we ask everybody, even the clients, when they come to us, a new client comes to us, we say, don't come and visit us. Please make a chronology and email it to us. So dates and events, yes. Ask them to make it. They might revise it, tell them take 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, whatever you want. But right from the beginning, please make a chronology, because only then you will understand the case. They understand it very well. You are new to the matter. So the chronology is the first thing that you have to do. It is the basis on which you will file your plaint, or even a chronology by the defendant. It will help you in filing your written statement. So chronology, yes, Ms. Solanki, it's extremely important. It must be done. Please insist that your client does it. I know they are lazy. They come to you with some papers. At the most, they might pay you some fees, and then they think that they have bought you and that you must do everything. You can't. Unless they help you, you can't. So you have to ask them, make a chronology, then come to us, and then we'll talk further. It's a very important document. Bolo, anything else?
No, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
If anyone wants to ask any question to sir, any participants?
Yeah, I have a question for you, sir.
At last, a male voice. At last, a male voice. We've been asked questions only by women. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, my name is Advait, and I wanted to ask, so you mentioned that while cross-examining, you set up a trap for your witness. So what could you elaborate on that? Could you give me an anecdote or instance as to how you do it?
I think I spoke about that fellow saying that I know Marathi and nothing else. And then we trapped him into saying English, and then we trapped him into saying Hindi. It was a trap. I didn't argue with him that no, you know other languages. The moment we started off, I pounced on him. See, a trap doesn't mean that you are asking a question and you want an answer. The trap can be laid very slowly. It can be a number of sticks on the pit, and he has to break only one to fall into it. Each case would be different, but this is a trap that if okay, you want to okay, if you got the time, I'll tell you. Remember, I said the two witnesses would be sequestered. The judge came in late. The first witness over, then he says, let's go for lunch. I knew that the two witnesses would then be talking because the cell phones had been switched off. The second fellow could not hear. But over lunch, they would be able to discuss matters. So obviously, Mr. A, the first fellow, tells Mr. B, the second witness, these are the questions I was asked. Now, this is also a Casey College thing. I'll come to that later. It's a Casey College thing of 1959. Now, I knew that the two fellows would talk. I changed my whole cross-examination for the second fellow completely. He had come to the court thinking that these are the questions I would ask. I trapped him by asking some other questions for which he was not prepared. And he fell into that trap because he was not prepared for it. Totally different from what I had asked the first fellow, because I knew that they would be speaking to each other and setting it up. And where did I learn this? Casey College Inter-Science Examination, 1959. We had a professor's son who would get the papers. In the morning, he comes and announces all the questions. And we get them 5 minutes later in the paper. So in the afternoon for lunch, everybody's after the guy. Give us, because physics 1 and physics 2, everybody's after him. Give us questions, give us questions, give us questions. He gave them all the wrong questions. The fellow spent 1 hour studying the wrong thing. Of course, there were a lot of abuses flying around in the court when the question paper was handed out. But I learned this. Of course, I was having my lunch. I had not paid attention to those questions because we were taught that this is not the way to appear for exams. You don't ask for questions and get, papers on the sly. You don't do it, full stop. But so many of the boys, poor fellows, 1 hour they wasted studying the wrong thing. I used that as a trap for that guy who came in after lunch. Changed it completely. He fell into the trap because he was thinking that I'll be asking him something else. Does that answer your question, Mr. Spinoza?
Yeah, and it answered my follow-up question too. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Spinoza, 1 minute. How come you have the name Spinoza? It's Spanish.
No, it's actually my father's name, and yeah, my grandparents were really into philosophy, so they thought it would be an appropriate name for an Indian child. So,
So this is your second name.
yeah.
It's not your surname. Now, okay. I'm sorry. I disturbed you. Your question, please.
Yeah. Anyone?
No,
Wants
Mr. Spinoza, I think has another question. Oh, that's Mr.
No, sir. I
Hello,
meant
sir.
you answered my follow-up question too. I intended to ask, in the case where your witness doesn't fall for your trap, do you re-strategize? Can you do it on the go, or do you need time to restructure your questions again?
Sir, if your client does not fall into the trap in 10 minutes, please let him go because you are not fit to question him or he's not the right person. Don't waste his time. Don't waste the court's time. Just keep on asking questions unnecessarily. You should be prepared. When you enter a courtroom and you're going to cross-examine a witness, you have it very clear in your mind the answer that you are going to get from him, not the question that you're going to ask. You want him to answer. You want him to say that, yes, Professor Ganguly wore a blue blouse. You want him to answer that. You don't want to put words into him and say, did Professor Ganguly wear a blue blouse? She will say, no, she did not. What are you going to do then? You lost your chance. So what you do is you enter the court making sure that now how would I do it? Professor Ganguly wore a red blouse the other day. Of course, the other advocate will say objection to this question. But by that time, it's already said. Okay. She did not wear a red blouse. And what color did she wear? Red is out. Right? So what is he going to answer? Of course, a good witness will say, yes, no, I don't know. That is the best. Most difficult witness is the one who says, yes, no, I don't know. It's very difficult to get answers out of them. But then you got to frame. I mean, it comes on the spur of the moment. You can't really prepare yourself. You have to think on your feet. You have to, all night long, you are thinking of how many questions you will ask, what the fellow's answers will be, and how you will be able to change track if you don't get that. It's difficult. It's not easy. It's not easy. I remember on that particular day, I was tossing and turning in bed, and my wife asked me, she says, oh, why aren't you asleep? Are your clients also awake? I said, my clients are fast asleep because I'm awake. It was a matter of life and death for them. So naturally, it's difficult. Don't think that it's easy to go into court and babble away. You are not there to sing a song. You might as well sing the national anthem otherwise and go home. You are there to do a job. It's tiring. You feel fatigued at the end of the day. You don't just shuffle papers in court. You're there to do a job. You are there to save your client. These are important things. Cross-examination is not a joke. Just as I said, even drafting is not a joke. People go through it because they think that karna hai to chalo likh denge. This is I deny this, I deny that. This is denied it, and let the judge decide. Why do you want the judge to decide? You put words into his mouth, you put thoughts into his head. Let him decide the way you want him to. But if you're going to answer just for the heck of it, as somebody said, each and every paragraph, I deny this paragraph 1, I deny paragraph 2, I deny paragraph 3. What's the sense? Have you done your job? No, you have not. You have not done justice to your client. Forget justice to the court. It's a difficult job. You have to be on. It's tiring. It's tiring. And if you are not tired, you've not done a good job. Full stop. I'm sorry. I'm treading on eggshells and I must have broken a lot of dreams. But that's the way it is. That's the way courtcraft is. I had excellent people who I had studied under. Unfortunately, most of them are gone, but they knew how to handle matters in court. We don't have the time, otherwise I would tell you so many other stories of how to win cases in court. Spur of the moment, one question, one statement, it turns the whole thing around. And you have got to be on, you got to be all ears. And this thing about this webinars and virtual hearings and all that, I am totally against it. How do I, if a witness comes, on the screen in front of me, I'm going to refuse. I'm not going to listen to him. I want to see his reactions. I want to make sure whether somebody is prompting him. Now, here I'm sitting, suppose my wife sitting next to me is passing me papers of what to say, and I'm reading them, and is that cross-examination? I want the witness to be in the box in front of me. I want the judge to see him. I want to see him sweat. I want to see his eyes blink all the time. I want to see him stammer. I want to see him look around and look at his advocate for answer. And then I say, don't look there. Look at the judge. You're not supposed to look at your advocate. But suppose he's sitting in front of a screen and his advocate is sitting behind him and showing him papers. This is the answer you've got to give. How are you going to hold that in a virtual court? Everybody says virtual court. Kaam jaldi ho jayega. All those 3 crore cases will be solved in 3 days. Do you think so? Is it going to hold? I might have a lot of books behind me. Nice, fancy office, and I'm giving some sort of arguments to the court. Fair enough. That might be so. My opponent will also have a more flashy office. Or I might not even have an office. I might be sitting in a room at home. My arguments will hold. But please remember, it is always the written thing that goes, because the judges change. I might give an argument today, the judge will say tomorrow. He might make some few notes, but just a few. The next judge doesn't really know what my arguments I put forward or when, or what my cross arguments were. So this is another thing which I would like to emphasize on. We never, at least I never, ever argue a matter, especially final arguments, without putting it on paper. My final arguments are also put on. And another thing, we had a very nasty experience a year and a half back. Final arguments were put on paper, the judge changed. Somebody removed the final argument from the court. And only the opponent's arguments were there on record, not ours. Since we had thought that it was happening earlier, it was in Thane. My client rang me. I said, immediately go to the court and ask for a copy, certified copies. He made a noise over there. The file was brought and 200 pages of our arguments, evidence, everything was missing. It was a case that was going on for 23 years. The judge, when he writes down the judgment, does not see your arguments. He only sees the other side's arguments. And when they give exhibit numbers, they give exhibit numbers on the first page, which is actually a precipice, a letter. So the whole bunch is removed. And that is why we are trying to move a writ petition in the court. In fact, when we brought this up in the High Court that this is what is happening, the judge recommended it. He says, please file a writ petition and say that this sort of thing is happening in court. And like in the High Court, each and every page should be serially numbered, what they call pagination. So when 200 pages are missing, the judge will know that 200 pages are missing. They came back, but they came back after a month, by which time the order was already dictated. So this is what happens. Please put it on paper and make sure that it remains on paper. I've got another case where the papers were removed from the court for 2 years and 3 months. 2 years and 3 months. Papers were put in court, they were recorded, and they went missing for 2 years and 3 months. And the defendants did not know what was going on. And then they are introduced on the last day. Fortunately, we found out because the exhibit numbers were given twice over. That was a very big mistake. People always make mistakes. People who do this thing always make mistakes. So there was exhibit numbers of 23 and 24 and then 63, 64, 65 on the same page. It was a matter of 12 and 75 paisa. If they torn out that page and put in a new one, but they were so lazy that they put in the same papers again and they were renumbered. All sorts of things happen. You got to be very careful, and please put everything on record.
Yes, Bindu ma'am.
Yeah, just before that, ask principal ma'am. Now we can notice Avinash Pujari also next speaker of the day.
Ma'am?
Yeah.
Hi.
Hello?
Hello, Bapu. How are you? After a long time, I'm seeing.
We have met, haven't we?
Yeah, of course.
I said, I've seen this guy before. Jog my memory, please.
Yeah. How is Divya?
Divya is here. That's amazing. Divya, try to find out. Can you recognize this fellow? Vinash.
Avinash. You used to call me postman. You remember the postman bag and your aunt's matter in Nainisha means.
My
yes,
God,
yes,
you
yes,
have lost a lot of hair.
yeah. Sling it across. Yeah. Now I remember. What are you doing, Avinash?
I'm with DSK. Yeah. I do corporate now. So I'm with DSK Legal now.
Big shot, huh? DSK Legal. We know a girl there, Pallavi.
Yeah, Pallavi Jagtap. Yeah, she's my good friend.
Of us.
Yeah.
She had given me an interesting case. That one we should discuss one day.
Okay, sure.
It's so bad. Let us give it to Babu.
Class principal ma'am.
Anyway.
Just see, madam.
Sir? Madam?
Yeah.
Hello?
Yes.
Just I want to tell, it was an excellent session, sir. Thank you so much for guiding us. Thank you so much, sir.
Never thank an advocate, never say sorry to an advocate. He will immediately send you a bill. If you say sorry or thank you to an advocate, make sure, guaranteed you'll get a bill for that.
Not just ask principal ma'am to speak.
Yeah, principal ma'am.
I can't see her.
Bindu ma'am.
I'll just try. Might be network or anything.
Madam.
Hello, Avinash is nice. Nice. I recognized your face. I said, I've seen this fellow someplace. But as Divya said, you lost a lot of hair.
Yeah.
Okay. It's been 14 years since we last met.
Yeah.
I'll drop in one day at DSK Legal. It's a Nariman Point, isn't it?
No, actually we are I sit at Lower Parel, the Parel office, Indiabulls Center, and we have another office at Kolaba. That's a litigation office.
Anyway, one day where does Pallavi sit?
Pallavi sits next to me, like in the IBC, Indiabulls Office Center.
Please tell her that I pity you. Chalo. Principal.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, unmute. Bindu ma'am, please unmute yourself. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, because I was calling ma'am. Ma'am is in college. So madam will be catching that. Someone else, no, hello, some sounds coming. Still doubts now. Purva?
Shall we knock off for the day?
Yes, ma'am.
No.
Yes.
Just wait.
Vote of thanks. Yeah. It was indeed a privilege to have you, sir, amongst us. It was really very interesting and very informative. We are really enlightened with your knowledge and your presence. I extend my sincere thanks on behalf of HSNC Boards, Kishan Chand Chelaram Law College. Thank you once again, sir. I wish to extend my thanks to our Vice Principal, Madam, Dr. Bindu Variat, for her motivation and support. I would like to thank Dr. Kiran Sharma, Madam, though she has not been able to join because she is busy with college work. I extend my sincere thanks to Dr. Kiran Sharma, Madam, for her ICNC, all practices without whom the webinar would have not been possible. I also like to thank the other teaching faculties of KC Law College for their support and the non-teaching staff of our college. Last but not the least, I would like to extend my sincere thanks to our principal, Madam Dr. Kavita Lalchandani, for her continuous support, motivation and guide. Thank you so much. Thank you to one and all again.
Yeah.
Tomorrow we will be having Advocate Avinash Pujari, who will be throwing light on the mergers and acquisitions laws in India. Yes, Bindu ma'am.
Yeah,
I would love to hear Avinash on that. Avinash, I would love to hear you on that.
Please.
Tomorrow, same time.
Yeah, same time.
And this sort of setup, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
That's
with the same link. Time at 10:40.
Yes.
Since I'm driving, but
that's why I'm not just madam is joining. Hello, Kiran. Yeah, Kiran.
Yeah, ma'am, I want to say something.
Yeah.
The lecture was really wonderful, ma'am. It was really a different kind of lecture. Thank you so much. I cannot, on my video right now I'm driving, but it was amazing, superb lecture, wonderful, sir. Very good. All aspects.
Thank you. We are preparing a very big bill for you.
She's Dr. Kiran Sharma.
Just a couple of days back, somebody wrote on LinkedIn. She says, "Put up your photograph on the web." I said, "Will you make me look handsome?" I knew what to answer. Sort of, you are already handsome. So I said, I knew what you would answer, and I have a response to that also. I will tell you that your powers of perception are very great, and they are second only to your honesty. So when you said so many things about me, good things, obviously your powers of perception are very great, and your honesty is still greater. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just the principal ma'am is online. Just check. Purva.
Yeah,
Principal
I'm
ma'am.
there. I'm just listening. You all people.
Yeah, ma'am.
I could hear part of your lecture, but I really enjoyed whatever I could hear because I'm in college, so I was busy in between with some other work. But really, I think what I could understand the way you have explained with your connecting with the story, I think it was really very amazing. So good to have you, with us. It's really wonderful. I can say whatever part, of course, I could not hear the full lecture about that. I wanted to, but it's really wonderful, that connecting the topic with the stories. And I think all the audience must have enjoyed thoroughly the lecture today, what you have given. So thank you so very much.
Principal, KC College was my college before it was yours.
Of course.
Cross-examination and drafting with the humor also. And you're most welcome.
It was a pleasant morning, nice morning. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Avinash, I see you smiling. I want to see you tomorrow. I'll ask so many questions. I'll wipe the smile off your face.
Don't worry, Avinash. I'm sure you'll be able to field all the questions effectively.
Yeah.
Thanks to Mrs. Divya Malcolm also for her cooperation. Divya madam, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yes, you have no idea the number of times I had to switch on the laptop, switch it off, switch it on, switch it off, download the Microsoft Windows. I'm getting 50% Office invoice.
Divya, you also come online, no? Because let all see, she's also our ex-KC, flourishing very well. Please, you can come. Yeah, please. Madam, she is also ex.
Now you see have been seeing a lousy face for 1 hour and you see a pretty face now.
Yes.
We were all students of Professor Bindu, and we need to thank her for training us so well. I think all of us were in the same batch, so we need to thank her.
Yes.
And we need to thank KC Law College. Thank you so much.
Avinash, one question.
Yeah.
Our batch, which would have been, I don't know, 100, 150 people.
Yeah.
How they are really practicing?
There are many. We have a group, XKC college
how many
group.
are actually practicing? I am not.
I don't know how many. Maybe
because
around
I
50.
see few people from our batch in court.
Yeah,
very few.
Maybe only not more than 50.
I don't see them.
Yeah.
I
Even
really I
Avinash
don't
was
see them.
in USA.
I
Sorry?
wish them all.
Avinash also was in USA.
No, I just went for some time. I didn't go. I just took a
He's
vacation.
hiding it. He's hiding it. So that is
No,
not
no,
fair.
no. No. My wife was in USA for 2.5 years. I used to just visit her, nothing else.
You,
Better we contact.
you
So I
went
think
to bring her back. You went to bring her back.
Yeah.
Chalo, anyway.
Thank
Okay,
you,
tomorrow.
one and all. Thank you so much. Thank
Bye.
you. Thank you.
Avinash, you can make it if you want to make for tomorrow's anything. We can check
I
it.
have already sent a PPT to